Hello and welcome. This is the video review for the version 7.0.3 release notes. So just to make clear, these are the new releases for version 7 sites only. So these won't be available in version 6. Version 6 sites won't be receiving any new features. So if you want to play with these features, you can spin up a new trial site, selecting the version 7 to run that on. Or if you want to implement these into an existing site, just reach out to WebinOne support and you can have that site converted to version 7 going forward. Alright, so we'll jump in. The first backlog item here, or feature, is just a simple one for validating module names. So when you're creating new custom modules, obviously we don't want the names to clash or create any conflicts there, because when you're calling in your module via the component tag, you'll usually reference it by name. So before, we could just create custom modules that had the same name. If I try and create one called team, you can see we get this little error here saying that already exists. So obviously we don't want that conflict happening. So it's just a little validation check there, so we don't do that accidentally. Moving to the next one, we have enhanced export logic for orders. So in our CRM for orders, the export's just been updated a little bit here, where it now offers a date range that we can select from. And I believe there's some extra things included in the report as well, such as first and last name, and just some things that were missing. Okay, moving on, we have a new system page. So this is for the reset password result. So we have the reset password system pages. So there's a few reset password orientated pages. So obviously one to request the password to be reset. There's the actual page that you do the resetting on once you've received the special link to allow that. With this feature, it's just adding in an additional reset password result page so that it forwards to a more relevant page that might display any error messages if the password didn't reset properly. But just to make that a little bit clearer and have a bit more control over the password reset process. And like most of the other pages, we'll have access to the form submission data via Liquid, so you can display correct messaging and what have you. Okay, and to do with the system emails that get sent out, so under email notifications, system emails, we'll look at the workflow notification here. So just getting a new property that we can use in these emails called this.siteURL. So this will output the URL of the site into the email. So that's helpful for if you're constructing links for an image or a download link or something like that. You can now dynamically insert the website URL. So you don't have to sift through a whole bunch of system emails if the URL changes for any reason on the site. Or it's helpful for when you're developing templates. You can just have that dynamic tag in there and you don't have to worry about updating it. And just one thing to note here, which it says, so particularly for form submissions where emails are generated after the form submission, it's going to capture the site URL based on when that form submission was done. So if you have multiple domains pointing to your site and someone's accessing one of the particular domains, that's the domain that's going to be captured for that particular submission and will be used in the email. Okay, next we have the new component for booking subscriptions. So this is something that was missing, where if you had event bookings and they're coming into the CRM in here, event bookings, there wasn't any actual way to render those on the site like we could for cases or form submissions. Orders we could render out through a component tag, and contacts we could do that as well. But there just wasn't a component for event bookings. If it was a paid booking, then you could kind of get it through the orders in a backwards sort of way. But now we have a direct access to the event bookings. So just to quickly show you what that looks like, I've put in the secure zone here. So yeah, you might have a secure page that people can log in and look at their bookings, for example. And yes, it's just simply a component tag of type booking subscriptions. And we can configure that basically the same way you can configure all the other components. So filtering them, whether it's the current member view only or listing all bookings from the CRM. So a whole bunch of filters, much like the other components, which is all listed here in the notes. And similar to the form submission, we have two different view types. You've got a list view, just a simplified basic output of data, and then the detail view, which will include all the form fields with from whichever form was used for that booking. So that's just to save memory. If you don't actually need those fields, there's no need to pull them into the site. Okay, moving on to improvements to the setup analytics file input. So when you're setting up the Google Analytics to connect to your site, the service account key file was a little confusing previously, as it would just always remain blank, even when you uploaded a file to it, or when coming back to check your settings, it would just appear that it's blank. And I believe there wasn't really a way to remove that file either, perhaps other than re-uploading a new file on top of it. But now we get these asterisks just to indicate that there's a file already saved here, and a little delete icon, so we can actually remove that file if we want to just clear that out. And of course, if you do change these values and resave, the file that was currently in there will remain there as well. It won't be overridden with anything or be cancelled out or anything like that. Okay, now the website backup scheduling, just had a few little updates there. I don't have this installed on this site, but I'll just look at the screenshots here. I'll move this over. So I'll just start on this other one. So I think they're just switching those around and adding in an hour option. So now we'll get a little bit more fine-grained control of backups. So on an hourly basis, but then if that's selected, every field would give the options of 6 and 12. So okay, next item, eCommerce catalog duplication, with or without the sub-content. So now we have the option of, when you're duplicating a product catalog, if there are products within the catalog, when we come to duplicate, we now actually have two options: whether we want to duplicate all the products that are within that catalog as well and create duplicates of all those products, or just duplicate the catalog itself, an empty catalog essentially. And sorry, just to clarify, both options will duplicate any sub-catalogs. So if you have catalogs within catalogs, they will get duplicated, but this option here is whether or not we're duplicating the products within those catalogs as well. So I think previously when we duplicated a catalog, it would duplicate the products as well. So I guess in most cases that's probably not what you would be looking for, and then you'd have to go and delete all those products. But yeah, now we have the option, so that's great. Okay, next on the list we have custom module advanced filtering. Okay, so this has been a long awaited for feature and allows us to basically search or filter module data in a much more controlled way. So just to give an example what this looks like, so here we have a component tag for the custom module called team. So the team custom module here is just listing out some team members, various bits of information. And normally, you'd set a layout, your limit, and if you wanted to filter those by a particular property, you would add in the filter by parameter, and it might be filter by the ID, and then you do the filter value for which ID you want to filter it by. So with that method, we can only filter by one thing. Whereas now we have a new parameter called where. So it's like where something is true or where this condition is met. And then it takes a JSON formatted query parameter. So these look pretty scary and complex, but once you sort of figure out how they're working, they're not too bad. But there's a link to some documentation here on how they're constructed, and we'll endeavor to get some documentation up with a lot of examples so we can hopefully just copy and paste and work out what you need to do there to filter in the way that you need to filter. So where this is great is that we can do a lot more advanced filtering. You can filter multiple properties at once, or filter via like an array of items. So here, for example, we're first setting up a OR condition. So it's just saying that where any of the things that I set within this OR condition, any of them can be true. The other option is AND. So you could set an AND condition where each of the conditions that I set in here, they all must be true for it to filter and list the results. So in this case, I'm going to set it to OR because I just want any of them to be true. So then within an array of whatever conditions I want to set, I'm now setting equals to, so an equals to the ID of 1997, and then again I'm setting another array item for equals the ID 1998. Now this, I don't have to do both of these as ID. I could be doing ID here, and then I could do the name of the item here, or some other custom property that you have. And then I could put a whole bunch of these together. But in this simple case, I just want to output two items that match these two IDs. So in this case, we should just get a result of 2. So if we have a look at the page here, this is what it outputs. And so it's just outputting the 2 team members that have those IDs. So just as an example, if I change this to AND, and we instead do a greater than or equal to, so that's greater than and equal to, and less than or equal to. In this case, I'm just going to bump the ID up to 1999. So essentially what this is saying is I want a range of items between the ID of 1997 and 1999. So there's only one ID in between that, so this should output 3 items. But basically we're doing a range filter here. So if I look at my page now and refresh, we should see the 3 items. So there's an extra one added in there now. But of course, these can get much more complicated. So it's going to open up a lot of flexibility and functionality on how we can use module data now. And also probably allow for a little bit more advanced searching if you want to sort of build your own search functionality. Whereas like the current site search is basically an AND operator. It's just everything that you add to that search just has to be true. So as you do a more complex search, it gets quite limiting. Whereas now we can really control how that filtering is done. So yeah, this is a really powerful feature. Okay, and lastly on the list, we have liquid parser inside text-based files. And this again is another amazing feature that's just going to open so many possibilities. So essentially what this allows is for you to use liquid rendering inside other files such as CSS files, JavaScript files, or any other text-based files. So like an XML feed, you can now create XML feeds or RSS feeds, and have that in a proper XML or RSS file that has the correct headers and everything like that for any external applications to look at. So for example, I have one here, creating a Google shopping feed was always a bit of an issue. There's no sort of built-in way to do that, or we can't generate an actual XML file that's going to be recognized correctly. But now with this feature, actually if I go to the file manager, so in here I've just created a actual XML text file. So I've just gone to create new file, and I've just given it the name shop-feed.xml, and in here I've called in a component. So you not only does it just render liquid, you can actually bring in all your site data, your component tags, and pull whatever data you want into these text files. So whether you're creating some sort of dynamic style sheet or using it with JavaScript to do some more powerful dynamic scripting, or as in this example, creating a Google shopping feed, generating a XML file. So here I'm pulling in the products. In this case, I'm just pulling them all in, and I've laid out all the sort of the structure that Google Shopping has dictated on how they want that formatted. So that's all sort of here, and I've filled in all the manual bits. But then I have a for loop which generates my actual items for the XML file, and that's what's going to build the feed that Google can then look at. Now, if we look at this file in the browser, so preview a new tab, we can see we get some errors because it's got that component tag at the front, it's got liquid in there, which all isn't valid XML formatting. If we view the page source, we can see exactly what we saw in the file manager. You can see the component, you can see all the liquid, nothing's been rendered. The liquid is just raw text. So to get that working, we have to add this URL parameter to the end of the file path. So question mark liquid equals 1. So if I add that now to the end of this, we can see it generates the XML feed. It's all displaying there correctly in the browser. We have our products dynamically added in. Yeah, so this is amazingly powerful. Google shopping feeds, for one, are now possible easily, and I will put this snippet onto the Treehouse site. So if anyone wants to use that, they can feel free to do so. And yeah, that concludes the release notes. So yeah, some really good features come to version 7 already. A really good reason to jump to version 7, of course. So just an update with all these new features. I am working on the documentation for these. The version 7 documentation will actually be a separate documentation site. So version 6 documentation will be kept separate. As version 7 progresses away from version 6, it'll get too messy to try and keep them together, and they'll just start to merge apart. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. That'll be coming very soon. A new documentation site for version 7, and hopefully all these will be in there as well. Okay, thank you very much, and catch you next time.